A really common strategy when people are trying to defend belief in God is just to define God as hazily as possible. I mean, they'll say something like, well, God ultimately is just meaning or love or being. You believe in love, meaning, being, therefore you believe in God, because that's all we really mean. But of course, if you really just mean those things, why not use those words? Why not just say being? Why not just say love? Why not just say meaning? There's no reason to bring the word God in unless you think it brings something extra into the situation. And if you do, then you're not strictly defining God as meaning, or God as being, or God as love, are you now? If you were to define God as something clear and understandable and distinct from other concepts that we already have perfectly good words for, like, I don't know, let's say you just said an omnipotent being is the definition of God. Seems pretty understandable. Well, in that case, it becomes really easy to refute the existence of God. I mean, that omnipotent being one can be disproven simply by the Homer Simpson strategy. Could God microwave a burrito so hot that even he couldn't eat it? Well, because if he's omnipotent, i.e. can do anything, then he can microwave that burrito as hot as he damn well pleases. But then he could also eat the burrito, therefore he didn't microwave it so hot even he couldn't eat it. So therefore there's at least something he can't do. Omnipotent beings are necessarily impossible. And therefore...
She was looking kind
In this moment I am euphoric, not because of any phony God's blessing, but because I am enlightened by my intelligence.
Coming and they don't stop 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 coming and they fucking don't stop coming. Don't stop coming. No, it's
Oh, that was cringy. Oh shit, sorry. I don't want to be cringy. I'll try to think of something else to talk about. Okay, the wage gap, right? So if someone is trying to defend the wage gap, then surely they must be saying that women are underpaid, right? That women are paid less than they're actually producing for their companies. Right? If they're not paid less than they're actually producing, and they're actually paid what they're worth, well, then there's no pay gap that's based on discrimination. It's just based on women's performance, which for whatever reason, may be due to choices, maybe due to biology, maybe due to any number of other factors, women's productivity is lower than men. So therefore, if the wage gap is a real thing and a discriminatory problem, then women must be getting paid less than they're actually worth. But if that's the case, then anyone who believes in the wage gap should just set up a business and hire all of those undervalued women for still lower than they're actually worth, but higher than what everyone else is currently paying for them. And by doing so, you will have a massive advantage in the marketplace. So the idea that all of these successful companies are just trashing their own bottom lines in order to be sexist is kind of laughable. And
hey leftists, can you count the genders? Well, you should be done counting by now, because there's only two when you troll a libtard, epic style.
Look at me, so rational, a skeptic of the times. Wow. Let's debate feminism a few more hundred times.
yeah. I've been part of two major movements, communities, things here on YouTube over the time that I've been here. The first simply as a commenter and liker and sharer of videos, and the second as an actual YouTuber sitting in my shitty Honda Fit. Those two movements are the atheist movement and the anti-feminist movement, or the anti-SJW movement more broadly, but fundamentally it's the anti-feminist movement, I still think, at its core. Now, the real problem with both of these movements was that they were both so successful. I know that sounds weird for that to be a problem, but that became a problem because all of the arguments got done to death. Right? Every conceivable argument for God had been done a million times. Every conceivable argument against or for feminism had been done a million times. There was no point in going over them over and over again, so people started to feel like they were cringy, right? It happened it's further along with the atheist community. The atheist community started with the Rational Response Squad, which now I assume you all think is cringy. And they did the Blasphemy Challenge, where people would come on and deny the existence of God, commit the one unforgivable sin for which Jesus would never forgive you, and therefore throw you into the fires of hell for all of eternity. And you're just going to be a badass atheist and go against all that and deny the Holy Spirit. I imagine you think that that's completely cringy. And I've got to be honest, I probably agree. That cringe reaction started, mostly towards the downfall of the atheist movement, which ultimately was crushed by feminism, thus sparking the anti-feminist movement. But I'll go into that another time. But towards the end of what can be considered the heyday of the atheist movement on YouTube, it's not dead, just it had a heyday, and this is not it. Towards the end of that, people started to say in that community that this is all cringe. We have done this a million times. Just come on, let's move topics, guys. This is really cringy. And they would make super funny, cringy memes about atheists, the fedoras and the neck beards and all that sort of stuff. Now, after a while, those memes started to get picked up by actual Christians. I mean, this has started to happen a lot recently. And the fact that the arguments had been done to death over and over again started to become an actual argument against those arguments. Right? The fact that they'd gotten so cringy has become an argument against them, and therefore surely that makes them relevant again and no longer cringy. But apparently not. Apparently it doesn't do that, because they're still considered completely cringy, despite the fact that that cringe has turned into actual dissent from those positions. Right? As though the fact that they're cringy is an argument against them. Not just a reason you shouldn't be bothered going through them over and over again, but an actual argument against them. I know that a lot of people who follow me now are religious themselves, and I understand that this might not seem like a big deal to you. It's like, okay, the atheists are getting the cringe bat whacked across their head over and over again. Who cares? This isn't a big issue. But that is going to happen with the anti-feminist movement as well. And in fact, it is starting to. Right? People within the anti-feminist movement have for a while been saying, this is done to death, it's cringe, let's move on, guys. And that's fine, right? It has been done to death. But beyond that, people who are actually actively opposed to the anti-feminist movement here on YouTube or elsewhere on the internet have started to adopt those memes and talk about how cringy it is as a way to actually attack anti-feminism. It hasn't really started working yet, but if you're a Christian and you are going to try to respond to my previous argument at the start of this video, with, oh, hell, cringe, atheist, fedora, Shrek, all that kind of thing, then okay, you are now defending the idea that a cringe is an argument, when in actual fact, a cringe is a response in your face. Right? It's something you do in response to something. It's not an argument against a proposition. And if you keep promoting the idea that it is in fact an argument against a proposition, that is going to come around to bite you in the ass as soon as the anti-feminist movement becomes cringy enough that it doesn't matter that it's actual feminists using the, anti-feminist cringe things, all those memes. It won't matter, because apparently we have decided that cringe is an actual argument. So if they keep cringing at us, well, then all of our anti-feminist arguments can just be thrown out the window, because they're cringe. So I have no idea how best to combat that, because in all actuality, these things have become cringy. Like, I also share that. I also cringe when I see someone make the obvious as fuck anti-religious or anti-feminist arguments. But I do know that this is not a tenable solution, right? We're going to have to find some way as a culture of moving beyond the fact that things can be cringe and at least start to put it in a bit more perspective and say, yeah, some of these arguments are done to death, but that is because those things are so clearly wrong that no one needs to be told it again. As soon as people start actually using the that's cringe thing as an argument against those positions, then we've got to start treating the that's cringe argument as what it is, not an argument. Now, I'm going to spend the remainder of this video responding to Ben Shapiro talking about proofs for God. And if you want to contest this, feel free to. Please do. I know I've got a lot of Christian followers at this point, and that's cool. I'm glad to have a little bit of a debate. But if your only response is, ha, atheist cringe, that is going to come back to bite you in the ass if you keep putting forward that meme that cringe is an argument. So without further ado, here's some bench bureau.
So I'm going to make now an Aristotelian/Aquinas argument for the existence of God. So the basic idea, and I'm going to try and boil this down so that it makes some sense. The basic Aristotelian argument for the existence of an unmoved mover is the idea that there are a bunch of, every object around you has actual and potential, right? It has an actuality and it has a potential. So if you have a candle and it's made of wax, it has the potential to be a pool of wax, but that potential is not fulfilled unless something acts upon it. The only thing that can act upon an object and make it fulfill its potential is either another object that has its own potential or something that is pure actuality, right? It does not have any potential. It's just actual. It just exists.
That does not make sense. I get where you're coming from. Something that is purely potential certainly can't result in anything happening in the universe. I mean, potential is when some aspect of something or something in its entirety could exist but doesn't currently. So if something is purely potential, right, like a match that hasn't been made yet but may one day be made, right, that match cannot, until it is made, until it is partially actual, be used to light a candle. The complete potentiality, something that's entirely potential, that cannot possibly result in something else. I agree. But neither can pure actuality. If something is completely actual, then it can't do anything. It can't change in any way, thus causing something to happen. Right? Look, if there is some object that has some function, right, then that function being enacted at some time means that it goes from a state where that function was not enacted to a state where that function was enacted, right? If a match had no potential, right, there's no potential, it's pure actuality, then how could I light a candle with it, right? I could light the match. Well, that means that then that match must have had the potential to be lit. Something that is pure actuality, by definition, cannot change, and therefore cannot change anything else. Okay, moving on.
Right, so the idea in the Aristotelian argument for God is that if you don't want an infinite regress of causes, if you don't want an infinite regress of things that have actuality and potential, and then something has to actualize it, and something has to actualize it, and something has to actualize it, you have to come to the unactualized actualizer.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Right? You do need to come to the unactualized actualizer if you want to avoid an infinite regress. Hey, why do you want to avoid an infinite regress? I mean, look, I get it. It can be difficult to fit the concept of infinity inside of a finite mind. It makes sense that that whole idea of infinity, of infinitely far away, of infinitely far back in time, those ideas don't really make sense to us particularly well. We can conceive of them in a very abstract sense, but they seem to contradict our natural sense of reasoning, or at least they don't work very well with our natural sense of reasoning. But that shouldn't surprise us. Finite beings, infinite thing, of course it doesn't fit. On the other hand, the other hypothesis is contradicted by the very rule that we're using to propose it, right? In order to propose this idea of an unactualized actualizer, we're starting with one of the premises that every event, every actualized thing needs an actualizer, right? There needs to be something with potential and something with some actuality, and I would also argue some potential, needs to actualize that thing. That's a necessary rule. Everything needs to be actualized by something else. Well, then our first actualizer, our pure actuality that somehow changes, I don't know how, and actualizes something else, that contradicts the very rule we use to propose it. A concept which is clearly contradictory, I think, is a less reasonable one to take as a working hypothesis than is one that simply doesn't make sense to us particularly well, although it's explained perfectly well why it wouldn't really make sense to us. So maybe there is a start to the chain, but you certainly haven't demonstrated it by proposing a rule that contradicts it. And there is also the possibility that there isn't a start to the chain and it just is an infinite regress.
You have to come to the unactualized actualizer, right? A thing that just is, right? A thing that just exists. And as Aquinas says, this is what we call God, right? This thing that exists and has the capacity to actualize the potential of other objects.
has the capacity, which means it has the potential to actualize other objects. Yes. Look, capacity and potential are synonymous in this context. So you're admitting that anything which can actualize something else must, before it did so, have had the potential to do that. God cannot do anything if he's pure actuality. Additionally, you say, we call this God. Why? This is what I said at the start. Why call that God? If you can actually come up with some concept of pure actuality, and you can demonstrate it to me, which you haven't, but even if you could, I would not see any good reason to call that God. God it has a capital G in most contexts because it is considered to be a being, a conscious entity. That's a specific object that we find in the universe, conscious entities, right? It's some kind of a biological process, or maybe a mechanical process, I don't know, artificial intelligence, I'll leave the possibility open, but at the moment, a biological process which models reality in its head and takes actions based on that model of reality to affect the actual reality, right? That is a conscious mind as far as we know. Why would we presume that pure causality, right? No, what was it? Pure actuality is a conscious mind. We shouldn't. In fact, it couldn't be. A conscious mind requires a process, right? Something to be happening within it. There's some input, thinks about it, and has some output. Right, that is a process. Therefore, it has potential. There are things about it which can and must change, because a conscious mind is a process. Look, if we actually do establish that there is a first cause or a first mover, which is an argument you'll go on to later, but I'll skip because it's basically the same, or there is some, pure actuality which resulted in everything somehow, you haven't established that is a conscious mind, and in fact, it could not possibly be one. So why call that thing God? Why use this term that has always been used to refer to some deity, some conscious being with immense power? Why use that word? It sounds to me like you're just trying to drag along the baggage of that word into some other concept. Now, how many of you are currently resisting the urge to post Fedora Shrek and then fretting about the fact that you can't post an image on YouTube, so looking up ASCII art to try to figure out a way of putting Fedora Shrek in ASCII in a comment under the video? I imagine it's quite a few of you. So I want you to resist that urge, and instead, if you're a Christian who disagrees with me, or you're a Jew who disagrees with me, a religious one, I mean, not an ethnic one, or you're some other kind of religious person who disagrees with me, someone else who believes in God, please explain why, rather than saying "lay atheist cringe" in the comments, because that is going to be used against you. I imagine you're all anti-feminists, and it's already starting to be used against you. Anyway, that's the point I wanted to make today. Yeah, get out of my shitty Honda.